And welcome to Effective Evolution. Today we're on Mars once again, and this is with the European Space Probe's panorama. And this is underscore 076427 underscore 1435. And this would incorporate the anticline area of Mars. And an anticline area is an area where the rock has folded over on itself and creates amazing ridgelines or whatnot. And we'll explore this with the transformation gadgets, and hopefully you'll find this very spectacular or whatnot. And please enjoy. That was obtained on the 8th of October 2025 on behalf of NASA. And this is the area that was obtained by the ESP's probing rovers, and it is underscore 076427 underscore 1435. And it is the shifted layers in Electris. That's Electris. Now, it is an amazing panorama, and it is a big anticline that is intersected by rising ridges. Now, anticlines are rock formations or conglomerates that have a face that is an upward convex shape around here. And this is just for the initial familiarity. And these are the areas that we'll be exploring further. And this is with the contrast and brightness manipulation or whatnot. You probably notice some very amazing formations already. Is for the first area that we'll be zooming in on, and that would be this area here. There are some very interesting designs and patterns here, indicative of various structures. Now, you could call this a crater if you like, but bear in mind it is a type of creation that could have some very interesting structures. And after applying the contrast brightness instrument somewhat, we get this gander, and there are amazing linear patterns here, symmetry, and just notice these designs. Seems to be a very smooth circular cylinder here, linked together. Here as well. There is a bit of shadow, of course, and this design here with a perfect linear pattern. Not to mention, just around the crater areas, there seems to be amazing structures rising up off of the surface. Please let your imagination take you to other types of reasoning and just notice the patterns. What could this be? Was it planned architecture or whatnot? Panorama, we're looking at this version with the aid of the European Space Probe, and this is ESP underscore 076 427 underscore 1435. And these are some of the areas of highlights with the zoom and also the zinc mode with the paint application and also contrast, brightness, and whatnot. And this is a general overview. And as we gain some familiarity with those areas, you can notice some very interesting patterns and designs. Dare we say structures? Or what else could they be? And remember, there's always an element of camouflage. It is a possibility to hide various structures for some reason. Designs, patterns, creations all over the place. Some have a bit of depth to them, with various towering characteristics. If we shed some light on some of these, you can notice some more designs and patterns. Quite remarkable designs. You'll know, of course. Very remarkable designs. It seems to be a type of arc over the surface. Various patterns, elevation to them. There's a structure here as well. Very symmetrical designs. this panorama of the Mars high-rise, that is ESP's underscore 076 427 underscore 1435, we're adding on the Dodge transformation tool to develop some more details and whatnot. And these would be the areas that we'll be putting our attention on. And of course, this is the quote anticline area where there are rock formations that have been folded over or whatnot. Is for the first area that we'll be zooming in on, and that would be this area here. There are some very interesting designs and patterns here, indicative of various structures. Now, you could call this a crater if you like, but bear in mind it is a type of creation that could have some very interesting structures. And after applying the contrast brightness instrument somewhat, we get this gander quote, and there are amazing linear patterns here, symmetry, and just notice these designs. Seems to be a very smooth circular cylinder here, linked together. Here as well, there is a bit of shadow, of course, and this design here with a perfect linear pattern. Not to mention, just around the quote crater areas, there seems to be amazing structures rising up off of the surface. Please let your imagination take you to other types of reasoning and just notice the patterns. What could this be? Was it planned architecture and whatnot? And this is the negative of this first area that could be called Crater 1. And notice that hexagonal quote structure is noticeable there, as well as some other designs around it. And of course, the negative is the reverse of light and darkness on the panorama. And the next area will be CR2, and that would be this area here. And zooming in, we get this type of view. And the contrast brightness tone is added on to this Dodge instrument. And perhaps you can notice some more vivid details all over the place. Linear patterns, some designs that seem to rise up off the surface. Very symmetrical designs that seem to rise off of the surface. In addition, and other intricate details in between. And it's that question, of course, is how was this created? Is it nature's work exclusively or otherwise? Just notice the immaculate structures of creativity. Perfectly circular and smooth type of dome here. Structures in between. Seems to be a rising type of wall. And next we'll switch to the fill light and clarity tool. And this sheds some more light on specific areas. Perhaps you can notice these very poignant structures or whatnot. And this would be the other area, of course. This would be this area here. We can call this Area 3 or CR3. And adding on the contrast brightness tone. You can probably notice how some structures really stand out. Of course, the first tool we used was the Dodge tool, and we added on some contrast brightness and the fill light clarity as well, which shines on some more light onto various areas in hope of bringing out more potent clarity or contrast between shadows and structures or designs all over the place. And adding on the shadow tool, of course, we're able to have a different perspective somewhat. And adjusting some of the transformation gadgets as well. There are some really amazing features we can make out with this topography. Remember, this is an anticline, i.e. areas where there is rock folded over or whatnot. And of course, remember there are always other things you can notice which seem to be symmetrical structures and the like. It's uncanny how you can notice all of these areas with time according to how many panoramas you go over or whatnot. Very amazing things that present themselves to you. As usual. And just notice the linear patterns, symmetry at the top of this area here. Won't call it a crater, but it's a circular landform. And as usual, there are always peculiar things inside some of these formations. And around it, all over the place. We're adding on the shadow tool, darkness tool, or the burn tool, however you'd like to refer to it. And there are various areas that we'll be having a gander at, specifically these areas here. And with this first area of ESPs underscore 076427 underscore 1435, we'll call this area A or whatnot. We can zoom in and get this type of panorama. And you can notice some very amazing symmetrical designs on this topography and implementing some of these adjustment tools or whatnot. There's some very notable characteristics that seem to develop. And you have to ask yourself, well, how were these formations created? And of course, we must consider the scale. So is the Mars high rise, of course. But there are some very uniform structures here as well. The other area of this panorama of ESPs underscore 076427 underscore 1435 with the shadow and burn tool would be this area here. And voila, just notice the symmetry the shiny parts of the structure, a linear fashion, and other structures all over the place that may overlap under and into other structures, or hexagonal types of patterns here, round, smooth, circular patterns. And it is always a treat to go over these formations, expose yourself to some more detail. Very symmetrical. Geometric patterns all over the place. With the infrared tool on this editor, we get this type of panorama. And of course, you could manipulate the strength, grain, and flare elements on the infrared tool using different wavelengths to gain some detail on the topography. And adding some adjustments with the transformation gadgets. You may or may not be able to discern some more remarkable features and whatnot. Of this landform. For example, is this some type of pod on various types of stands here? Are these pipe-like structures, vegetation, quote, wood-like structures on the surface of Mars? And what is this triangular object here? Seems to be well camouflaged in this landform. Various structures rising over the surface. Is there a civilization? Or was a civilization here? On this particular panorama. Structures to note. Mind-boggling, to say the least. Then, with this area of Mars, ESPs underscore 0764270 underscore 1435, the anticline area, the area where the rock has intersected and folded over on itself to create spectacular structures, formations, or whatnot. Of course, you've probably noticed some very interesting designs and creations all over the place. And it raises a question yet again regarding how these formations were created And was there a civilization here before, presently, or one there will be back in the future or whatnot? And please keep your imagination active. And until next time, thank you once again on behalf of Effective Evolution.